Hey everybody, rank board 3 for Yahoo is out, and this is our show where we break down the biggest movers between boards 2 and 3 and whether those players now have shifted from either a value to not to yes, or to some point in between those two polar opposites. I'm Dan Vespris, and this is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball presented by FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook. They have been a amazing partner here. We're in our second month with them, and it's just been truly amazing. Also happy to say that I've partnered with the good folks over at Fantrax that has the best commissioner tools in the biz. Check out fantrax.com/oldmansquad. You can sign up for an account completely for free. There is absolutely no obligation to do anything at all with it, but that'll let them know that you heard about them on my show. And I'm running a slow mock, a 14-team industry slow mock on Fantrax right now, and we'll be doing a bunch of shows about it. So you might as well have an account so that you could be involved perhaps in the next one. As far as today is concerned, we're looking at movers. There were way more players that jumped up the board here on version 3 than there were that went down the board on version 3. How is that possible, you may ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. I can tell you. It's because a player jumping 11 slots up the board doesn't necessarily mean that a corresponding player is going to go 11 slots down the board. In fact, it's very easy for a guy to jump all the way up and have everybody that person passed in rankings just click down one slot. And that's basically what happened during this particular revision, in that, for example, let's just go to the first page of names. For example, if you look kind of down near the middle of this list, YouTubers, you can see it. Everybody else, I'll read you the whole list as we work our way through it. Someone like a Kevin Durant, who jumped from 31 up to 20, most of the guys in between 31 and 20 just fell one slot because KD passed them all. So it wasn't a bunch of guys that fell down. That's how you can have more guys rising than falling. There are 2 pages worth of risers and only 4 names I thought interesting on the falling side. Let's dive into some of them right now. By the way, please like and subscribe. If you haven't made up your mind on whether or not you want to do those things, I'll ask you again later, but it would certainly be a really nice gesture if you did so at some point during the program. Cam Whitmore is the biggest leaper of anybody relevant on the board. He jumped 30 slots from number 200 to number 170. The good news there on Whitmore is that he's still not really in a place where people are consistently looking for him in fantasy drafts. He's still a guy where you have to scroll down pretty far, and that works to our advantage because he's a guy you can let go until basically the last round, which is 13 in Yahoo public leagues. Just let it fall, because the 13th round, you're still not, most teams, seeing the number 170th ranked player in your draft window. 13th round, the last pick is 156, and scrolling down, people are going to miss it. Now, more people are going to find him at 170 than found him at 200, because the farther you have to scroll to find a guy, the less likely they are to be drafted in a non-expert league. And that's not to say that you need to draft Cam Whitmore. I just think he's a great last-round pick because he's going to go and Washington's going to give him a look, and he might be a guy that gets to go jack up a whole bunch of shots, because when he's out there for more than 20 minutes a game, he's taking a lot of shots. He is not bashful on that front. The big issue, of course, is that he's not a good foul shooter, and if you're going to be a good shooter with maybe perhaps slightly low field goal percent, but a guy who hits 3-pointers and scores, you kind of hope that there's that other category that he can help out with. And it's not all that clear that such a category exists yet for Whitmore, but we also haven't really seen it. What if he gets a nice chunk of minutes? I think Cam belongs on rosters as a last round draft pick, and the Yahoo's got him moving up the board here, but I don't think they've moved him far enough. I think they got to get him more kind of like in view. He's still in out of sight, out of mind territory. Scoot Henderson went 22 slots. He's the second biggest leaper on the last board, from 147 to 125. That's the new landing spot. I'm not drafting Scoot this year. I'm very high on a lot of Portland Trailblazers. He is not one of them. he was number 254 last year. 13 points, 3 boards, 5 assists. All those things are a decent starting point. But I don't think, I think a lot of folks believe that Anthony Simons being gone is the big door opening for Scoot Henderson that we've been waiting for. I'm not convinced of that. I think the Blazers are actually going to try to win ball games this year. And that means that Drew Holiday, who they went out and got, they gave up a guy with a shorter contract. Remember, Holiday has the longer contract than Anthony Simons did. They went out and got Drew Holiday, presumably as some kind of veteran leader. Listen, I'll be the first one to tell you that last year I thought Holiday was going to have a decent season, and it was pretty meh by all accounts. It was like the definition of meh. He was 11, 4, and 4 with, the steals were still solid and the free throw was good, but number 107 just doesn't really move the needle in 9-cat, and he missed a whole bunch of time, then got more time off later, ended up missing 20 games altogether. I wasn't going into this season expecting a whole lot out of Holiday, but if he's now going to Portland to go kind of lead the young guys into an era of, I think they would hope, winning while they wait on Damian Lillard to come back and be that guy next year, I think he's going to play a little bit. And if he plays, he's going to be doing more than in Boston, where he was behind Tatum, behind Brown, behind Pritchard, behind Porzingis, behind Derek White. In Portland, he'll be behind, Denny. He'll be behind Shaedon Sharpe. But honestly, it's not that clear that there's a third guy that you can say, oh, this dude is definitely going to take a whole bunch more shots. Jeremy Grant, I guess, would be the other one. But he'll be hurt within 3 weeks anyway. So I actually kind of like Drew Holiday, oddly enough, in Portland, and not so much Scoot. He's not a guy I'm targeting in drafts, even in specific punt builds. I just don't think that there's enough there. Ace Bailey moved up 17 slots, number 131. You guys know how I feel about rookies. And, the simple answer there is I avoid them. Because Ace is a bigger rookie. Like I've said, I've tried to soften my stance on rookie big men, but Bailey is more of like he's sort of a long, tall wing as opposed to a small big. He's 6'10", about 200. And you can look at his college numbers if you want a better feel for it. And it doesn't necessarily translate perfectly, but he was at 46% from the field, 69% at the free throw line. I like the 18-7 with 2.3 combined defensive stats, but if you're not going to be a good percentages guy and you're not going to be, at least with point guards, like eventually they figure out the usage thing and the assists and kind of cover up everything else. I just don't think there's going to be enough going on for Bailey unless he's truly majestic in defensive stats. And I don't think that's going to happen immediately. And I don't think that, maybe by mid-end of the year, he starts to creep into that discussion, but he's just not a guy that I'm targeting in leagues where I feel like I need to get off to a decent start, which is most of them. So not my cup of tea. I get it. If you're in a head-to-head league that's just a heavy on volume, you take him sort of at the end of your draft, and then you hope for something good after the All-Star break. But you guys know one of my tenets, well, obviously the big one is don't draft injured players, but another one is you got to get off to a quick start, and that kind of ties into the same thing. Don't draft a guy you're expecting to be a stash type. Modest Buzelis went up 14 slots, number 107, which again is not a massive leap, but it does very much put him in that first group of flyers part of the board, which if you guys have been following along with the show, you guys know that area of the board had guys like Klingon and Asar Thompson and Brandon Pajemski and Tumani Kamara and Christian Brown. And now, Klingon actually moved a little bit above those guys, but now you add another name to the mix in that same discussion in Buzelis, who I'll admit, I was kind of like all of those flyer types in that range. Buzelis was probably my least favorite of them, which is not to knock him. I think he's going to have a pretty good year, but I have Buzelis more in like the 80 to 125 range projection. Because I don't think he's going to have the percentages he had down the stretch last year when he was number 70 and he was at 51% from the field and almost 80% at the foul line. He might be able to replicate the 2.3 threes and the 2.1 defensive stats, but I don't think the percentages hold quite that high. So I've got Buzelis more in that, again, yeah, I guess 80 to 125. You could call it 75 to 100 something range. And that's still fine if he actually falls to pick whatever the hell number I just said he was, 107. Okay. But again, I'd rather have a Star Thompson. I'd rather have Toumani Camara. I'd rather have Christian Brown. I'd rather have Donovan Clingan. Buzelis would be sort of at the bottom of that part of my priority totem pole. Kevin Porter Jr. moves up again. He's been sort of a double leaper now, and that's really the big reason that he's on our discussion board today. Not because moving up 13 slots from 128 to 115 is notable, but because he's moved up now 128 slots over his 2 weeks, or of the, not 2 weeks, but 2 revisions to the Yahoo board, from 243 to 128, and then from 128 to 115. He's a guy that's just now on the map. And he's not in my first tier of flyers. He has things that are wrong with his 9-cat game. It's still not clear that he's going to be sort of the unfettered point guard in Milwaukee. I liked him a lot at 250 as a last round pick. I don't think that I would go into this. This is 10th round now. I think I'd be looking more at something a little bit later than that. 11th round? I guess I'm splitting hairs a little bit. I was still okay with Kevin Porter in the late 120s, but there's usually still a couple of guys around 115 that I think have a better shot at it. Of course, the Kevin Porter upside is, does Giannis get moved? And Giannis thinks he might get traded, so I don't know what that tells us. Mark Williams up 13 slots from 93 to 80, which takes a little bit of the shine off Mark. I liked him a lot at 93, and you could find him on some of our breakout big leaper kind of shows that we have done on board 1 and board 2. And now you're creeping into the how much is an injury going to impact things part of the proceedings. The nice thing about Mark Williams is he's still basically a top 40 guy when he's playing center minutes. So we're still not that close to the per game expectation, but there is something different about having to go 7th round versus 8th, if only because the other guys going around Mark Williams aren't guys that, failed physicals, basically. I still think that I think Mark could be moved farther before you take the full value out of him. But this is obviously the correct direction for Williams to be moving. And I only hope that the moving in that direction slows down somewhat soon. By the way, if you're thinking about getting down on Phoenix, their season win total over at FanDuel is 32.5, and people don't think they're going to get there. I think this is a team that actually comes out and plays really hard at the beginning of the year, and they might rack up a few early wins that kind of push them nearer to the over. But I don't think I could take the over on this Phoenix team. I think, eventually when everybody else kind of catches up to whatever they are, the shine's going to come off, and it's going to be a pretty ugly second half of the season for the Suns. So I probably would lean to the under on the Suns as well. Again, that number over at FanDuel Sports is 32.5. Isaiah Hartenstein up 11 spots to number 79 on the board. I'm not super into Hartenstein this year. It just feels like a lot of the damage he did last season came when Chet Holmgren missed 3 months. That's when he was the full-time starter at center. And that's not to say that Hartenstein can't have a good end of the season, because towards the end of the year, when Holmgren was back, he was still posting top 50 numbers. It was just on kind of unsustainably high a lot of stuff. He's playing only 25 minutes a game over that stretch, and that's not the number we want, but he was shooting 65% from the field, 75 at the foul line. He was around 2.5 combined defensive stats. That's the stuff you look at and you kind of go, if we really extended Hartenstein to a full season at 25, 26 minutes instead of 28 or 29, could he stay inside the top 75? And the answer is maybe, but it's not quite so cut and dry like it was last season. I think you're probably looking more at a Hartenstein that parallels the second season in New York. It was a 25 and some odd minutes. He was around 8 points, 8 boards. And then, 28 minutes a game last year, he was up at 11 rebounds. And the steals and blocks Could they be at 2.3 to 2.5? They could. I can't possibly guarantee it. So, in my opinion here, if there was value on Hartenstein, it's mostly gone at 79. He's still fine there. I don't think he's going to be much below that marker, but I've got him somewhere between 60 and 100 on my board, and you're kind of splitting the difference with that spot. So that's about where Isaiah belongs, I believe, this year. Josh Giddey took a flying leap forward, from 35 to 24. That is a big jump for someone early in the board. And now you got to take him in the second round if you want to get him. And I think Giddey in the third round was kind of a fun shot sort of guy. Giddey in the second round, you better be damn sure that he's going to be able to pick up right where he left off from last season. And I got to tell you guys, I am not damn sure that he's going to pick up where he left off. I think he's going to have a really good season. Don't get me wrong. I think Giddey is a pretty easy top 50 guy. He probably gets inside the top 40. But there's some other stuff that happened this past year, especially down the stretch when everybody's like, oh, he was a first rounder down the stretch, that is pretty hard to replicate. One of the big ones over that span is that Giddey was at 2.6 combined defensive stats over the last month of the season. And he was at almost 2.5 for the final 2 months of the season. That's not a thing that we think is going to happen. 50% from the field and 81% at the free throw line, probably not going to happen, especially now that he's taking more three-pointers. I don't expect the field goal percent to go up by 3 to 4% against his career mark. The 80% free throws might hold. You know, he's 81 and then 78 the last 2 seasons, so he's probably somewhere in that neck of the woods. The rebounds, the assists, those are all going to be pretty good when he's playing 30-some-odd minutes, so those I'm not going to try to dock him in any way. But then you're also talking about down the stretch, he was taking 15 shots a game on top of everything else. So he was at 21 points, 11 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 3-pointers. He was going crazy in almost every category. But I think a lot of that stuff is going to come down. There's a chance he could get to the second round. I don't know that he goes beyond that. And so this, for me, kind of prices him out. Kevin Durant, also in the early part of the board, jumps 11 slots to number 20 now. KD is up to number 20, which, look, that's where he belonged to begin with. I don't know what he was doing at 31. We were lucky for a few weeks there. KD belongs at 20 because last year he was number 11 and he missed 20 ball games. And by totals, that put him at 25. This year, he's going to probably get to do a little bit more because there's no Devin Booker. He's battling with basically no one in Houston for the premier touches role. Alperen Sengun is going to be the number 2 guy on that team, especially with no Freddie VanVleet. So KD's going to take more shots. His per game value figures to go up from number 11. I've got him around number 8. Not that that really matters. Like, first round is first round, mid first round, whatever. But how many games is he going to miss? I don't know. If he's number 8 and he misses 20 games, he's right around number 20 by totals, maybe even a little bit higher than that. So I still like KD at 20. I think this is a perfectly fair spot to get him. I would even go a little bit earlier than that, but it's not the insane over the moon, my favorite value on the board kind of stuff that we were getting before that. Donovan Clingan moved up 10 spots, number 91. I still like him at 91. I've already mentioned that I'm big time into a lot of the Portland Trailblazers this year. Clingan at 100 was a guy that I was targeting in most drafts. At 91, I still think you're going to have some room for growth there. I feel like Clingan is profiling as between 50 and 80 in rank this year, so I still think you're getting him kind of behind his floor. It's just not by quite as much as it was before. So I'm looking for Clingan to get around 9 points, 10 to 11 rebounds, 1.5 to 2 blocks per game because he's truly a massive dude. I don't know about assists and steals. They'll probably be somewhat on the low side. I'm hoping that Donovan's field goal percent ticks up a little bit, that, you know, he can just get enough shots right around the rim where he, instead of shooting 50, 51% for down the stretch is where he was at, maybe we can get him back up, 53, 54 full time. That should push him up into that 50 to 75 range pretty easily. So I still like Clingan at 91 instead of 101. I like him a little bit less, but I still think he's a value there. I would still do it. As is the case for the next dude on the board, and that's Payton Pritchard, who moves up 9 spots to the number 87. His value should be better than that as well. He was better than 87 this past year. He's number 79, so only by a little bit, almost the same, really. But he played 28 minutes a game and got 11 shots this last year. No Tatum, no Porzingis, no Drew Holiday. Yes, Anthony Simons is there, but Pritchard is going to be a guy who steps into a larger scoring role, especially if they give Jaylen Brown any days off or he's just hurt of his own accord. Pritchard figures to get at least one, probably more like 2.5 more shots per game. And I could see him being a top 50 guy this year because he does it on pretty good percentages. Add another 2 minutes to his minute per game marker, and suddenly you've got a guy that could be somewhere in that 17, 18 points, 3.5 threes, 4 boards, 4 assists, over a steal per game on good percentages. That's pretty damn close to a top 50 guy. I don't like Pritchard as much at 87 as I liked him at 96, but just like with Klingon and Kevin Durant before him, I still like him here. Friends, we are very proud to announce that Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball has partnered with the HOF app to help you with all of your online creation of value. What the hell does that mean? Well, here's the thing. HOF Bets, the HOF app, I should say, has all these unbelievably cool tools that smart bettors use to build out their ticket. Use the HOF app to get powerful analytics at your fingertips and tip the odds in your favor. It's your go-to for building smarter parlays. If that's your jam, that's not really my jam, but if that's your jam, they have a tool called a parlay optimizer that'll actually help you take out the legs that are too risky. HOF crunches millions of data points in seconds. So whether you're building a same-game parlay, picking a money line, whatever, let the stats help guide your decisions. Listen, if you're the kind of person, and I've got some friends that do this, that like to do like a 6-leg parlay because it's fun. They just put a couple of bucks on it, and if it hits, they figure they'll make out like a bandit. But there's nothing that crushes them more. And they always send me a text in a group chat that's like, look at this. And it's like 5 legs that hit and the 6th didn't. Use HOF. Use HOF. That optimizer will help you take out the one that's going to drop. Look, it's like 5 minutes before the game starts and you're trying to decide this is the place to go. And right now, for a limited time, our listeners on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball not only get a 7-day free trial of HOF, but 50% off the first month when you use the code. You guys ready for this? Squad. You don't even need to remember the old man part. Just the code SQUAD gets you a 7-day free trial, so there's no obligation there. If you cancel before the 7-day free trial is done, great. Not a penny comes out of your wallet. But if you let it ride, you get that 50% off your first month. Just download the HOF app on iOS or Android, enter code SQUAD, and you are all set. Again, that's the HOF app to help you make smarter tickets and win your plays. RJ Barrett, I don't fully understand this one, moved up 7 spots to number 63 on the board. And I get it. I know we've talked about the fact that the Yahoo board this year is definitely more geared towards points leaguers. So that certainly plays a role. But RJ Barrett in 9-cat was 227th last year. In 8-cat, 136th. In 8-cat with a punt free throw, 75. And in points leagues, number 70. And now he's going at 63 in a 9-cat board, by all accounts, or sort of like the aggregate board. But you guys are all playing 8 or 9-cat, I presume. If you're watching the show for points league information, you're probably in the wrong spot, at least right now. And his role figures to get smaller because remember in Toronto last year, Scotty Barnes missed a bunch of time. Brandon Ingram wasn't there yet. Emmanuel quickly missed almost the entire damn season. So when RJ Barrett was on the floor, and he missed 25 games himself, when he was on the floor, 24, he was getting to do extra. So let's just assume that everybody stays healthy, which I don't think we can safely assume, but just for this argument's sake, to make the case as hard as possible, to disprove basically, we're just going to assume that the best case scenario happens for health. Forget that even for a minute. RJ Barrett's not going to get 27 plus usage when Barnes, Ingram, and Quickly are all out there too. So his role is shrinking year over year, but his draft slot is going up minute by minute. It's going up. I don't understand it at all. He started at 70th. He didn't move at all the first time around. I didn't even like him at 70th, which is where he was in points leagues last year. And now he's going earlier. No, thank you. And in 9 and 8 cat, just don't. 4 more names on the risers board. And while I flip the page here on YouTube, a good time to remind you guys, hey, if you have now enjoyed what we've done so far, and this has been even remotely helpful, please do click that like and subscribe button, however you're taking in the content. See, hopefully that was enough to get you. Zion goes up 7 spots, number 32. Everybody's been enjoying the Zion, is he more in shape now and blah, blah, blah. Look, Zion in points leagues was right around 30-something, so I think I sort of get this one. No DeJounte Murray, no Brandon Ingram. He's going to be a one-man wrecking crew on that team. I guess Trey Murphy's going to help wreck some stuff. Jordan Poole is there. He takes CJ McCollum's spot. Zion's going to do a ton. Whether or not you draft Zion has everything to do with your belief in his health and whether or not you're punting free throws. If you're punting free throws, Zion was a second rounder last year, and he might even do more this season. If you are trying to win free throws, you probably shouldn't draft Zion in the 3rd round. It's a pretty easy decision. If you are punting free throws, you are still allowed to be afraid of Zion's health situation, but it's hard to pass him over at this point because he's such a terrific fit for that type of team, because he gets 5 assists, because he gets steals, which you're going to need out of a punt free throw team. He doesn't get you 3-pointers, so you may end up in a punt free throw, punt threes type of double punt, but Zion doesn't force you to punt the other things that a big, heavy lineup tends to stink at, which is scoring and assists. It's why Giannis in that type of build is also so effective, because they get assists and they get scoring. You can get your low-scoring big men in a punt free throw build much later on. You need the guys in this build that get you assists and scoring if you don't want to basically quadruple punt right out of the chute, or quintuple punt. In any event, I'm not taking Zion here because typically I don't lean into that type of team build, but I also understand why someone might. So again, not my cup of tea, but I can't write him off for all of you guys. And frankly, the difference between him being 39th and 32nd means almost nothing to me. Early 4th versus mid 3rd, like if you're in that punt build, this is where you were taking him anyway. If you're not, you weren't anyway. There's going to be someone in your league that takes him here who has that build going. That's just the way it's going to go. In every damn league, there's always one. Jaylen Green went up 5 spots. The number 60. This is another one that I don't fully comprehend. I think there is a hope that he gets to do more in Phoenix than he got to do in Houston, and I don't know if that's necessarily the case, and I'm not sure that I care, because last year Jaylen Green was number 129 in 9-cat. In 8-cat, he was 101. In 8-cat, in a punt field goal, he was number 67. So that's, I guess, how you get to this marker, where you're like 8-cat punt field goal. He gets 1 extra shot per game in Phoenix. Okay, now he's number 60. But if you're not, again, like coming right down that slip and slide into that build, an 8-cat punt field goal build or a 9-cat punt field goal punt turnover, I don't want him there. I think you can do better. Yeah, he scores. Okay, great. You get scoring. What else do you get? 3 threes? All right, I guess that's a positive there. He's not going to get more playing time. He played plenty in Houston. 33 minutes a game. That's already full starters minutes. I don't know what we think is going to happen here. Maybe he just gets a fresh start. Maybe that's the hope, that the field goal percent is better with a fresh start. But I kind of think he is who he is, which is a specific build guy. So if you got that build going, all right, whatever. But if you don't. And another guy where 65 and 60, it makes absolutely no difference to me. If you're in that build, you were looking at him in that range. And if you weren't, you weren't. You tweren't. Darius Garland moves 5 slots up the board from 60 to 55. I don't think this is a notable move. The Jaylen Green one is the same amount, but I thought it was notable because it's like, why is he going farther up the board? With Darius Garland, I don't really know why he's going farther up the board either, because he figures to miss the beginning of the season with his toe stuff. And you know me, I'm not drafting guys that are hurt to start the year. I know. Point guards are hard to find. And Garland was number 42 last season in 8-cat when he was healthy. He was mid-40s in 9-cat when he was healthy, which was most of last year prior to, the very, 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 very end. And he had a great year, 21 points, 6.5 assists, 1.2 steals, good percentages. I like Darius Garland, but I'm not drafting a guy who's hurt to start the year. Because then you got the training camp stuff coming in. Like, he might be healthy by 2-3 weeks into the year, but then he's going to need another 2 to 3 weeks to get ramped up. And suddenly you've got like a half-cocked Darius Garland for the next 3 weeks. And 6 weeks into the year, you finally have a full-bore Garland. And maybe your team survives that, but now you got to spend, a 5th rounder on a guy who might not be all that good for a month. I'm not doing that. I want these guys, if I'm going to draft a guy in the first 5 rounds who might miss a month of games, and isn't healthy to start the year, which is another one, which I guess is a little bit like the Kawhi Leonard thing. He's going to miss a few weeks of games because of the back-to-back stuff, but Kawhi is he's going to be number 6 probably this year. Garland is in the 40s. That's a big difference. So, nah. And then LeBron. This one was really interesting. He moved up 3 slots again to number 12 now. From 22 to 15 to 12. I did not see LeBron James rocket boosting up the board this season. The dude is old. I've said it 1,000 times on the show. I'm done fading LeBron. He's probably going to impress me again. He was number 12 in 8-cat last year. So that's probably why he's there now. But man, he's going to do a little bit less, guys. Every year, he's going to do a little bit less. Luka's ready to roll, man. LeBron's still going to do plenty. But I thought he was a fun kind of mid to late second rounder. I don't think I can justify taking him on the turn when you're talking about a guy who probably maxes out at about 70 ball games this year. Last season went about as well as it could from a health standpoint. And he's a freight train, man, but he's very old. Even freight trains miss games here and there when they get this age. He also had a career best free throw shooting year. Don't know if that's going to stick. It feels like very small, little itty bitty, teeny weeny losses are due. So small that if you drafted him in the middle or late second round, you wouldn't really care about it. But if you're spending your pick on the turn on LeBron, you better be damn sure. That's surprising. That's a big number, man. Here are the fallers, and there are very few of them. Like I said, and a couple are barely even qualify. But the biggest one is Tyler Hero. He fell 27 spots. This is obviously because of an injury that's going to keep him out for the first month or two of the season. Now his ADP or his pre-rank is down at 70. Still too early. I'm not drafting a guy who's hurt to start the year, especially not a guy who's expected to miss a whole bunch of time to start the year. So I hope Hero goes farther. I might consider him outside the top 100 in a lot of formats, but I am not blowing a pick where I can still get... I might be able to get... The expectation was that Tyler Hero was going to be a top 40 fantasy play. You might find a top 40 guy near 70 who's not hurt to start the year. So, no. Malik Monk fell 11 slots from 85 to 96, and he needs to keep on falling. Malik Monk was not good at the end of last year when he got sent back to the bench. He has a fantasy game that at times is somewhat limited. In 8-cat, he was number 78 last year, but he played 32 minutes a ball game. And with Dennis Schroeder around, I don't think that's happening. And down the stretch last year, when he got jumped by Keon Ellis for playing time, and he was down at 26 minutes per game, even in 8-cat, he was outside the top 110. And in 9-cat, he was down near 195. I am passing on Malik Monk in basically all formats. A punt turnover, punt field goal build, Malik Monk is the only pathway to getting him inside that 10th round range, I believe, this year. And so that's the spot you look at him. But even then, this is still too early. You should be getting him at 115, 120, or 125, not 95, and definitely not 85, which is where he was before. Pascal Siakam fell 6 spots to number 30. I'm going to soften my anti-Siakam stance a little bit there now that you don't have to take him at the end of the second round, and you might be able to get him falling to you near the end of the third. I think generally okay with Siakam near the end of the third round. Mostly because the other guys around there also have their own issues. I'm worried about the Pacers pulling the plug partway through the year. So that would be kind of the big thing. I think Siakam's going to get 16, 17 shots a night. So you're looking at a guy that should probably be near 22, 23 points, maybe 2 threes, 6.5, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, could get you near a steal and a block on decent field goal and not great free throw. He should be a top 50 guy when he's upright this year, but the Indiana Pacers season stuff has me a bit worried. So 30, in my opinion, still a little bit early, but you're seeing him slide farther than that in a lot of drafts. I got him at like 43 or 44 in an expert mock recently, and that's fine. You know, if you can get Siakam in the fourth, I think that's a pretty good play. Late third to and beyond is fine. So we're getting closer on Siakam. We're not quite there yet, but we are inching up on it. And Ivica Zubac fell 4 spots, number 34. He's another guy that, in my opinion, probably still needs to go a little bit farther. Zoo was amazing last year. He was number 30, played in 80 out of 82 games, but the Clippers now have an actual legitimate backup center in Brook Lopez. So I don't think they need to play Zubac 33, 34 minutes a night. They played him 34 down the stretch when he was a second rounder. Much like Siakam, I would happily take Zubac in the fourth round, and now we're getting pretty close to that. I think in the first 3 rounds, you're generally looking for guys that are going to score a little bit more. Now, if you're going into a points build hard right out of the chute, which there's no Halliburton around, so the pathway to that is not quite as obvious this season, then maybe Zubac makes a bit more sense, but there's just so many big men. I don't know why you'd have to spend. Now it's a late third at least, but earlier it was like a late second, early third before he started falling on a center that doesn't even really block that many shots. You know, it was all about field goal percent and rebounds for Zubac, and I'm not using a third round pick on that without one more category that he can really lean into, especially when you've got that backup kind of breathing down his neck. And that's your boards for today, guys. Those are the big movers on Yahoo's revision. I guess it's the second time they've revised it, but it's board 3 on Yahoo. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Dan Besbris. This show is brought to you by FanDuel, FanTrax, and the HOF app. Please like, rate, subscribe on your way out, and find me on Twitter because we're starting to do stuff over there. I'm posting the results of my industry mock as it's going. Twitter is at Dan Besbris, DanBesbris. Shana Tova to my listeners of the Jewish faith as we head into the conclusion here of Rosh Hashanah. That's when I'm recording the show, at least. More fun stuff coming up on the channel that in the next couple of hours. And please, if you're listening after the fact, 5-star review. That'd be cool. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you guys soon.